Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
So imagine waking up, right? And you find out the company that makes the phone in your pocket, the watch on your wrist, and the computer on your desk is suddenly replacing its legendary CEO. I mean, we're talking about the single most valuable company on the planet making a massive change. Welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Alex.
And I'm Morgan.
We are coming to you straight from Snarful Solutions Group right here in Sacramento, California. Today is Tuesday, April 21, 2026. And for those of you joining us for the first time, our mission here is pretty straightforward. We basically take the daily tech news, look past all the PR spin, and break down exactly what it means for you.
Yeah, exactly. For the working professionals and families who are just trying to, navigate this incredibly fast-moving digital world, we are sort of trying to bridge that gap between a Silicon Valley boardroom decision and the actual gadget sitting on your living room coffee table, figuring out the why and the how behind the big headlines.
Right. But before we dive headfirst into this massive corporate earthquake, we need to get you caught up on the morning updates. So if you're stepping out here in Sacramento today, you might want to grab an umbrella.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We're looking at showers and thunderstorms hovering around 59 degrees Fahrenheit, with winds blowing at about 5 to 9 miles per hour. And just a quick safety note for everyone listening across the country. As of this morning, there are 431 active U.S. weather alerts, and 197 of those are over land.
That is a lot of active alerts. So yeah, please check weather.gov for the details in your specific area. And over on the financial side, the markets gave us a bit of a mixed bag to start the week.
They really did.
Yeah, just running down Monday's closes, the Dow Jones edged up just a bit, closing at 49,442.56. That's a tiny microscopic bump of 0.04%. The S&P 500 went the other way, down just a hair to close at 7,109.14, which is a drop of 0.11%.
And for anyone tracking crypto, Bitcoin is actually trending up this morning. It opened at 75,854 and is currently sitting at 76,120.56.
Gaining about 0.35%, right?
Yeah. Right. But, those numbers are pretty much just the opening act for the real story today. The world's largest tech giant just announced a historic shift in leadership. Let's unpack this. But first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Today's episode was brought to you by Strong Coffee, the premium instant coffee that tastes like a traditional brew, but is packed with 15 grams of protein, MCTs, and adaptogens like ashwagandha. Get clean, sustained energy without the jitters. Use promo code SNARFUL for 20% off at strongcoffeecompany.com.
All right, September 1st, 2026. Mark your calendars, because that is the day Tim Cook officially steps down as CEO of Apple after 15 years.
Context is just absolutely vital here. I mean, When he took over back in 2011, he stepped in just 43 days before Steve Jobs passed away.
Wow, yeah.
So he was inheriting the mantle from an absolute titan. I mean, a visionary who many thought was literally the entire soul of the company.
The narrative back then wasn't just skeptical, it was honestly kind of fatalistic.
People genuinely thought they were doomed.
Exactly. The consensus was that without a product visionary at the helm, the company would just slowly fade into a conventional, boring hardware manufacturer.
But I mean, the numbers tell a wildly different story. When he first joined the company back in 1998, they were literally teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. Fast forward to today, and we are looking at a $4 trillion market cap.
$4 trillion. It's almost hard to even comprehend that.
It really is. And he grew revenue from $108 billion in 2011 to over $416 billion in 2025.
Yeah, and the explosive growth of the iPhone from 2014 onward obviously fueled a massive chunk of that. But the real genius of his tenure wasn't just, selling more phones. It was a fundamental shift in the whole business model.
Right, moving away from just relying on hardware.
Exactly. He took a company that relied on you buying a shiny new piece of glass every 3 years and turned it into an ecosystem that your entire family relies on every single day.
And I actually want to dig into how that ecosystem works, because that's where the everyday impact really hits you, the listener. It is not just brand loyalty, it is structural friction.
Yes.
He oversaw the birth of the wearables category, right? The Apple Watch, the AirPods.
Things you practically live in.
Exactly. These are devices people literally wear on their bodies from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. But the real lock-in, the real stickiness is the services sector.
Oh, absolutely. The services sector is the masterpiece of his era. We are talking about iCloud, Apple Music, Apple Pay.
Right.
By building out this sector, He basically turned the company into a utility. You pay your monthly iCloud storage fee, just like you pay your water bill or your electricity bill.
Yeah, you don't even think about it anymore.
Right, and the brilliance is in the friction. If you decide to switch to a competitor's phone, you aren't just buying a different piece of hardware. You are suddenly facing the massive headache of moving a decade of photos out of a proprietary cloud.
Ugh, literally the worst.
Losing access to shared family calendars and leaving the iMessage network, the cost of leaving just became way too high. During his tenure, services grew into a $100 billion business all on its own.
But, the internal memos and press releases make it very clear he is not actually leaving the building. He is stepping down as CEO to become the executive chairman of the board. And his portfolio in that new role is highly, highly specific.
Right. He's not just retiring to a beach somewhere.
No, not at all. He is sticking around to handle the messy geopolitical reality of running a global hardware empire.
Because running a $4 trillion company is honestly less about designing gadgets and more about acting as a shadow head of state at this point. The CEO is dealing with incredibly complex global supply chains, manufacturing bottlenecks.
Tariffs.
Yeah, tariffs. Memory crunches tied to massive AI chip demand, and just intense geopolitical tensions everywhere.
Think about it like a football team. For 15 years, he has been both the head coach and the quarterback. But the landscape has gotten so hostile with international trade wars, tariffs, and supply chain disruptions.
Right, like we saw with his previous negotiations regarding tariffs and securing that $600 billion U.S. investment commitment.
Exactly. So the company just drafted a brand new rookie quarterback to run the offense and design the plays. But the defense is bringing a heavy blitz of political and geopolitical challenges. The old CEO is essentially stepping into the role of an elite offensive lineman.
Oh, I really like that analogy.
Right. He is sticking around purely to block those heavy blitzes, so the new quarterback has a clean pocket to focus entirely on the product.
The structural insulation there is brilliant. He's taking all the ugliest, most politically fraught parts of the job off the table for his successor. And that new quarterback, the guy stepping into the clean pocket, is John Ternus.
Right. So John Ternus is 50 years old, and he's been at the company for 25 years. He joined way back in 2001. Literally half of his life has been spent inside those walls.
Wow, 25 years.
Yeah. But his fundamental DNA is what makes this such a radical transition. The outgoing CEO has an MBA from Duke. He came up through IBM and Compaq. He is, at his core, a logistics and supply chain master.
A spreadsheet guy, basically.
A brilliant one. I mean, he can look at a global map, identify a microscopic component, and figure out how to source 50 million of them with maximum efficiency. But John Ternus, he's a mechanical engineer.
And the contrast there just couldn't be sharper. He graduated from the University of Pennsylvania with a degree in mechanical engineering. His senior project wasn't some business case study. It was actually developing a mechanical feeding arm for quadriplegics controlled entirely by head movements.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and before his current tenure, he worked at Virtual Research Systems. He is what engineers call close to the metal.
And, his fingerprints are on almost every piece of hardware we touch today. As the senior vice president of hardware engineering, he oversaw the teams behind the radically thin iPhone Air, the iPhone 17, the iPad Pro, the AirPods, and the new MacBook Neo.
Those are all massive hits.
Huge! And most importantly, he led the physical transition to the M-series Apple Silicon Macs.
But we have to acknowledge that a product-first CEO comes with a specific set of risks. When you put someone who is completely obsessed with physical tolerances and materials in charge, you get bolder design swings.
Right.
And sometimes those swings change the industry, like the wireless architecture of the AirPods. But sometimes they result in spectacular failures. The Bloomberg profiles point out he was heavily involved with the MacBook Touch Bar, which a lot of professionals found incredibly frustrating.
Oh, I remember the Touch Bar.
Yeah. And of course, the infamous butterfly keyboard.
Let's actually pause on that butterfly keyboard for a second, because understanding why it failed is really crucial to understanding the mindset of this new CEO. So a standard laptop keyboard uses a scissor switch. It looks like an X underneath the keycap.
Right, it's tried and true.
Exactly. It's reliable, it has good travel, but it takes up vertical space. The hardware engineering team wanted to make the laptop impossibly thin, so they invented the butterfly switch. It looked like a wide V, kind of like a butterfly's wings. It reduced the key travel to barely a millimeter.
The intention there was pure engineering optimization, just make it thinner, make it lighter. But the physical reality of the real world completely destroyed it.
Because of the dust.
Right. Because the travel was so incredibly shallow and the mechanism was so delicate, a single speck of dust or a microscopic breadcrumb could just wedge itself under the butterfly wing. The key would just literally stop working.
It was an engineering marvel in a clean room, but an absolute disaster in a local coffee shop.
Exactly. It caused years of repair headaches and just massive consumer frustration.
Which brings me to a major pushback I really have to raise here. You are taking a hardware and materials guy, someone who obsesses over 3D printed titanium and recycled aluminum compounds, someone who will literally risk keyboard functionality just to shave off a millimeter of thickness.
Right.
And you're putting him in charge right now. Is that actually a massive miscalculation? Because if you look at the landscape, the biggest battleground for families, for techies, for the entire industry isn't physical hardware anymore. It's artificial intelligence. It is invisible software.
You are hitting on the absolute core vulnerability of this entire transition. The company has undeniably lagged behind its mega-cap peers in the generative AI race.
They really have.
Yeah, they stumbled trying to deliver the AI features they promised at their developer conferences. They recently had to rely on a partnership with Google Gemini just to power the updated version of Siri because their own internal models just weren't ready.
So if the future is an invisible, software-driven AI interface that anticipates your needs, does knowing how to machine a piece of titanium actually matter anymore?
It matters deeply, but in a way that honestly isn't immediately obvious. AI requires a staggering amount of compute power. When you ask a large language model a question, it is lighting up billions of parameters simultaneously to predict the next word.
Right, and doing that in the cloud is tricky.
Exactly. If you do that processing in the cloud, you face latency issues, a lag between asking the question and getting the answer. And you face massive privacy concerns. You are sending your personal data off your device.
And people definitely do not want their private text messages or family photos sent to some massive server farm just to have an AI summarize them.
Precisely. So the holy grail right now is on-device AI, doing the processing locally on the phone in your pocket. But lighting up billions of transistors on a tiny chip generates an immense amount of heat.
Right, it drains the battery.
Yeah, it draws massive amperage from a tiny battery. A software engineer can write the most elegant AI model in the world, but if the physical chassis of the phone can't dissipate the heat, the phone will literally burn your hand or drain the battery in 20 minutes.
So a new CEO has to prove that his mechanical engineering expertise can create the optimal physical vessel to contain and cool this invisible software.
Which perfectly bridges the gap to the corporate drama that broke out behind the scenes. And why the third piece of this transition story is arguably the most critical for the everyday user. We have to talk about Johnny Suji.
Yes, the new Chief Hardware Officer. This is a brand new, massively expanded C-suite role. He is absorbing both hardware engineering and hardware technologies into one mega division.
And that spans 5 areas, right?
Yeah, 5 distinct areas: silicon, advanced technologies, platform architecture, hardware engineering, and project management.
To understand why this matters, we have to rewind to December. Reports leak that Suji was seriously considering leaving the company. Put yourself in his shoes for a moment. You are a peer of John Ternus. You both run massive, critically important divisions.
Right.
Suddenly, the internal winds shift, and it becomes very clear that your peer is getting the CEO chair.
Yeah.
It is just basic human nature that a promotion like that stings for the executives who are passed over.
Oh, it stings even more when you look at Suji's resume. He joined back in 2008. He is universally recognized as the father of Apple Silicon.
He's a legend.
He really is. He led the development of the A4 chip, which was the brain of the early iPhone and iPad. And he drove the monumental transition away from Intel processors to the custom M series chips for the Mac lineup.
Let's actually explain why that M-series transition was such a big deal for the person listening right now. Because it ties directly back to that heat and battery problem we just discussed. Before Suji's custom chips, computers used a really fragmented architecture.
Right, all separate parts.
Exactly. You had a CPU over here doing the math, you had RAM over there holding the short-term memory, and you had a graphics processing unit somewhere else drawing the pictures. Data had to constantly travel across the motherboard between all these different components.
And traveling data requires power, and power generates heat. What Suji and his team perfected was the system on a chip, or SO. They took all those disparate components and basically baked them onto a single piece of silicon.
Which is incredible.
It is. Furthermore, they introduced unified memory. So the CPU and the GPU didn't have to copy data back and forth anymore. They just pointed to the exact same pool of memory.
And that drastically cut down the power consumption.
Exactly. It's the reason a modern laptop doesn't sound like a jet engine taking off when you open 20 browser tabs. And why you can work on a cross-country flight without ever plugging into an outlet.
So when the guy sitting next to you at the executive table gets tapped to be the CEO, and you are the architectural genius behind the very silicon that makes the hardware function, you start answering calls from headhunters at rival companies.
Naturally.
The board knew this, so they created this expanded chief hardware officer role specifically for him.
It is the absolute definition of executive retention. Sruji has built one of the most innovative silicon teams on the planet, overseeing the chips, the batteries, the cameras, the display controllers. If he walks out the door to a competitor, the entire product roadmap for the next 5 years is deeply, deeply compromised.
Think about your favorite local restaurant, the one where you celebrate anniversaries or birthdays. If the owners change the general manager, the person doing the accounting, managing the supply deliveries, handling the front of house logistics,
you really don't notice.
You as a customer honestly don't care. As long as the lights are on, it doesn't affect your night. But you care deeply about the food. You want the owners to do absolutely whatever it takes, pay whatever salary they have to pay to keep the master head chef in the kitchen so your favorite dish tastes exactly the same.
That is a great way to look at it. The new CEO might be the new general manager, bringing a different vibe to the physical restaurant, but Sruji is the head chef. By combining all 5 of those hardware divisions under him, the company is ensuring that the team designing the physical shape of the phone is working in absolute lockstep with the team designing the brain of the phone.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. When you try to shrink a device, you have to shrink the chip and figure out new thermal pathways to manage the heat. Having all of that under one person just eliminates those internal bottlenecks.
So for the working professional listening to this on their commute right now, why does keeping Sruji in the building matter to them on a Tuesday morning?
Because the AI future we just talked about is entirely dependent on him. As the industry tries to cram more demanding generative AI tasks onto your local devices to protect your privacy, they need custom silicon that can actually handle massive computational loads efficiently.
Without melting the phone.
Exactly. They need neural processing units built directly into the chips that can run these models without destroying your battery life. Keeping Sruji means the invisible engine inside your tech will keep evolving at the pace required to actually run the software of the future.
It really is a fascinating, multi-layered chessboard. You have the outgoing CEO moving up to essentially act as a geopolitical shield.
Right.
Absorbing the impact of tariffs and supply chain wars.
Yep.
You have a new CEO stepping in to redesign the physical, tactile experience of the hardware with an engineer's obsession. And you have the Silicon Mastermind getting a massive promotion to ensure the engine powering all of it doesn't skip a beat.
It's an incredibly deliberate, thoughtful succession plan. It is a luxury of stability that the company simply did not have 15 years ago during their last major leadership transition.
Before we wrap up, a quick thanks to Old Glory, an iconic music and sports fan merch store. Perfect for the techie in your life. Use promo code SNARFL for 15% off at oldglory.com.
Connecting the dots on all of this, we're basically watching the foundation being poured for the next decade of consumer technologies.
Absolutely.
The old guard is securing the borders, the new chief executive is redefining the physical vessels we interact with, and the hardware engineering chief is providing the necessary horsepower.
It is a changing of the guard that will eventually alter the daily habits of billions of users around the globe.
Yeah.
But I really want to leave you with a final thought to chew on today. Building on that tension between hardware and software we explored earlier.
Yep.
The new CEO has spent his entire professional life conquering the physical world. He understands the limits of titanium, the properties of recycled aluminum, and the precise tolerances of milled glass. But as we accelerate into a future defined by artificial intelligence, the primary battleground is no longer physical.
No, not at all.
It's an invisible, infinitely complex, software-driven frontier. The ultimate question is whether a brilliant mechanical engineer can successfully navigate a paradigm where the most important defining feature of a device is a generative AI model he cannot actually touch. Or will the most valuable company in the world find itself permanently reliant on outside players like Google and OpenAI to supply the invisible brains for their beautifully engineered bodies?
That tension between the physical and the digital is absolutely going to define this new era.
We're here to help at Snarful, so reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.